Hello, everybody. What is up? What is going on? How are you doing? I am back with another Super Bowl predictions video, and here we are talking about the big hoopla in the shipyard: the Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus the Kansas City Chiefs. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are trying to double their number of all-time championships, while Kansas City is hoping to double the number of Lombardi trophies that they've won over the last year. Looking to go for their second in a row, which I think would be great. Hopefully they get that far. But, of course, all the pregame hype, at least in my opinion, has been largely focused on the showdown between Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes Jr. But before we get into that, let's take a little trip down memory lane and go over when the Chiefs and the Buccaneers first met earlier this season. I'd completely forgotten about this. So for a little history lesson, for those who might not have remembered, including myself, the Kansas City Chiefs defeated Tampa Bay by a final score of 27-24 back in Week 12. Just going on that alone, one of the many questions going into Super Bowl 55 is, will Tom Brady lead the Buccaneers to their second ever Lombardi trophy, or are the Kansas City Chiefs destined to repeat and win a second in a row? Only time will tell. But going into this game from Week 12, Tampa Bay lost 27-24 at home, but the Buccaneers had to throw out their offensive game plan early after the Chiefs jumped to a 17-0 first quarter lead, and Kansas City appeared to take their foot off the gas a little bit from that point forward. Tyreek Hill was targeted 15 times, and he caught 13 passes for 269 yards and scored 3 touchdowns. Excuse me. Patrick Mahomes Jr., on the other hand, he was sacked just 2 times for a total loss of 6 yards, but in the end he still managed to throw for 462 yards, while Tom Brady only threw for 345. So going into the Super Bowl, the potential for offensive fireworks is going to be a big contributing factor going into the game, at least on the offensive side. But when the Chiefs and the Buccaneers faced off against each other in Week 12, they racked up over 960 yards of offense, and I think that was the 6th most in any game this year. But both teams struggled with turnovers and combined for only 51 points. So going into the Super Bowl, both teams are going to be going into this game with full confidence, all the momentum in the world, feeling as if no one and no thing could stop them. And especially Tampa Bay, they're the first team in NFL history to not only play the Super Bowl in their home state, they're also the first team to play the Super Bowl in their home stadium. So win or lose, the 2020-2021 Tampa Bay Buccaneers are in the history books. So I give them credit for making it this far. So at least they're the first team in NFL history to have at least reached that pinnacle. So you can't take that away from them. But going back to the Super Bowl, though, the Buccaneers are averaging an NFL high 16 pressures per game this year. And Kansas City, meanwhile, they recorded, I want to say it was 24 against the Buffalo Bills in the AFC Championship game. And I think that was the most by any team in a playoff game this year. So, although they've been divergent, their paths to the championship game took a rather extreme turn. They were rather wild, if you ask me. I mean, the Buccaneers, for example, they finished second in the NFC South behind the New Orleans Saints, and they were en route to the wild card games. First, they had to go to Washington to take on the Redskins. They go back to New Orleans for their third encounter of the season. And then they go to the frozen tundra to take on the Green Bay Packers, and after that, they literally ended up going home to get ready to take on the Chiefs. Kansas City, on the other hand, they had the top seed in a lone bye week in the AFC. And then after that, they ended up outlasting the Cleveland Browns with Patrick Mahomes Jr. sidelined for nearly half the game, and Chad Henne stepping in to take over for him in the interim. And then they ended up going into the AFC Championship game against Buffalo and handled them with relative ease. But with the week off between title conferences and title conference games in the Super Bowl, both sides are well rested and they're ready to go for this Sunday. The only perceivable edge might be as far as the Buccaneers in terms of preparing for the game. They could just as well drive to Raymond James Stadium while the Kansas City Chiefs have to take a plane out to the Tampa Bay airport. I don't remember the next international airport. I think it's Miami or something, but wherever it is, both teams are going to be eager to get back onto the field and write the final chapter, a rather unfathomable, atypical, and wild ride of a season. At least in my opinion, I would call this a wild ride. My first talking point that I want to try and get to is the quarterback battle. Patrick Mahomes Jr. versus Tom Brady. Now I know this isn't a prisoner of the moment situation, widely considered to be the NFL's best quarterback or anything, but Patrick Mahomes Jr., if you really think about it, he's already in the history books. He's the youngest player in NFL history to win regular season and Super Bowl MVP trophies. And while this is only his third year as a starting quarterback, but also his second year in a row going to the Super Bowl, you could make the argument that he's already got a strong case for going into the Hall of Fame. If after Super Bowl 55 he were to hypothetically announce his retirement and his intentions to stop playing football, I guarantee you he'd probably go into the Hall of Fame. But speaking of players going into the Hall of Fame, if you look at Tom Brady, though, he's 43. I want to say sometime in the summer or the spring of this year he turns 44. Or he's 42 going on 43, or he's 43 going on 44, but be that as it may. He's like an ageless wonder, if you ask me, and he's shown no signs of decline. He's in his 10th NFL championship game, but this time he's in the NFC and he's with a new team, with Tampa Bay. And he's also a member of the NFL's 100th anniversary all-time team. And at the same time, he's also widely considered to be one of the greatest quarterbacks to have ever played the position, and rightfully so. There are some people who say he's the greatest Super Bowl quarterback of all time, with 9 prior appearances, 6 rings, and 4 Super Bowl MVPs. But this matchup, going into this Sunday night, this is going to be a matchup of the best quarterback of all time versus one of the best quarterbacks today. So, as far as Patrick Mahomes Jr. goes, he's well on his way to being an all-time great, at least in my opinion. Tom Brady's looking for his 7th Super Bowl ring. Patrick Mahomes Jr. is looking for his 2nd. And should the Kansas City Chiefs win the Super Bowl, they would be the 2nd team in NFL history, if I remember correctly, to have done so since Tom Brady's tenure on the New England Patriots, when they won what was the Super Bowl 38, I believe it was? Yeah, Super Bowl 38. Excuse me, Super Bowl 38 during the 2000 and the 2003-2004 season, and then the 2004-2005 season at Super Bowl 39. So the 2003-2004 New England Patriots winning the Super Bowl against the Carolina Panthers, and then the 2004-2005 New England Patriots when they went to Super Bowl 39 and took on the Philadelphia Eagles. But again, with all the pregame hype, just looking at the debate as far as the quarterbacks, it's going to be a real knockdown, drag-out fight going into the shipyard this Sunday night. I can promise you that much. Now for the couple of other predictions that I want to make. I apologize if this part takes a little while, but here it goes. Some notes that I had taken, so I'm going to try and summarize it as best I can. I wouldn't expect anything less out of Tom Brady as far as his overall performance here. Much like the rest of the team as a whole, Brady's going to play well. I think even for the majority of the game at one point in time, they just might outplay, outmatch, and outsmart Kansas City. But what Super Bowl 54 taught me, or the whole season in general for that matter, as a matter of fact, the playoffs in general, there's one thing that I was taught was this, as far as Patrick Mahomes Jr. He has the ability to erase things the way that Tom Brady did when he was in his peak. Patrick Mahomes Jr. is able to erase holes created either by attrition or injury, either by attrition or by injury. For example, the AFC Championship game where he was mostly without both of his tackles and Sammy Watkins for a while. He can erase the strengths of other teams, and he can even erase bad stretches of football. But remember last year, though, the San Francisco 49ers outplayed the Chiefs for about 3.5 quarters in Super Bowl 54. And Kansas City still managed to come back and win. And in about 8.5 minutes or so left in the game, Patrick Mahomes Jr. made that not even matter. So I wouldn't bet against Tom. I wouldn't have betted against Tom Brady over the years, but I'm not betting against Patrick Mahomes Jr. now. But looking at the offense, though, Kansas City's offense, I think is going to be a little too much for even the defense of the Buccaneers. And maybe the defense just might be a little too much to handle for the rejuvenated Buccaneers offense to keep up with. But then again, the more I think about the Buccaneers front four going up against the Chiefs line without their two top tackles, the more I try to rethink my pick. I'm tempted not to, however, but I think one of the other things that this game really hinges on is how well Kansas City's backup tackles can secure the edge and how, if at all, additional protection in the backfield changes what Kansas City does, which they do rather well offensively. So if the Buccaneers didn't already have two premium edge rushers in Jason Pierre-Paul and Shaq Barrett on their roster, plus some chaos-creating interior defensive tackles, I would have probably looked at this game on paper and just said, in a landslide, give me the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't care what the point spread is. But constant pressure on Patrick Mahomes Jr., or at least disallowing him from keeping plays going and getting free receivers, could probably be a game changer, and it just might work in favor of Tampa Bay, at least on the defense. But while Patrick Mahomes Jr. doesn't run the ball very often, he's rather evasive in the backfield. And he's really good with the use of his legs. He's able to create separation, and he has his arm strength to boot. Helps make up for having moved outside the pocket. But he's rarely sacked, though. And his ability to throw under pressure negates any advantage of a blitz. So to Patrick Mahomes Jr., a blitz is just another way of saying there's one fewer defender in coverage. So if you're the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, your best bet may be to go after him with a four-man rush, or some other play of that nature. And that's a point that was repeated several times by each of the defensive stars. The thing, especially going through the last couple of games, if if you can find yourself some tape as far as how Tampa Bay's defense plays compared to how Kansas City's plays and the other way around, then you might be able to draw a comparison between the two as far as that point. But Patrick Mahomes Jr. is great at avoiding pressure, but I think pass protection is going to be an issue for Kansas City in a way that it wasn't during their game in Week 12. Again, Patrick Mahomes Jr. was sacked 2 times for a total loss of 6 yards. But then again, you could also make the argument that he could have been sacked, several more times and lost a whole lot more. But that's neither here nor there. As far as Tampa Bay, though, I think they can get some pressure against injured line in Kansas City, and I think the Chiefs' defense might be a little bit of a concern going into this game as well. But on the other hand, I keep going back to this, though, as far as Tampa Bay. They were, believe it or not, in a real drag-out, knockdown, all guns blazing fight against the Washington Redskins. Excuse me. They ended up going to the Louisiana Superdome to exact revenge on the New Orleans Saints, and then they ended up benefiting from a large dose of luck in the frozen tundra against the Green Bay Packers. So, Tampa Bay struggled against elite teams this year, and the Chiefs, I think, in my opinion, at least as far as the AFC goes, are the best team in the league. Because if they weren't, they wouldn't be in the Super Bowl picture right now. Somebody else would. But Patrick Mahomes Jr., I think he's going to be a little more comfortable in his second start for the Super Bowl. But this time he doesn't have to worry about having to deal with the likes of DeForest Buckner and Nick Bosa from the San Francisco 49ers. He's got to deal with the likes of Jason Pierre-Paul and Ndamukong Suh and Shaq Barrett instead this time around. But as far as Tampa Bay, though, it's rather incredible that they even made it this far. Tom Brady, again, he's going to be playing in his 10th Super Bowl. Wow. 10 Super Bowls. I literally cannot believe that, just saying that. 10 Super Bowls. And he's still not showing any signs of slowing down anytime soon. However, though, there's no player at this point in 2020 that I would much rather have on my team than Patrick Mahomes Jr. Playing for Andy Reid in an explosive offense like this. I mean, especially throwing to the likes of Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill, handing off the ball to Le'Veon Bell and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I mean, there's no reason to bet against him. And if you ask me, by extension, there's also no reason to bet against the Kansas City Chiefs becoming the NFL's first repeat champion again since the 03-04 season and the 04-05 season. Have those who have bet against Tom Brady been wrong in the past? Of course. Sarcastically, if there were some times where you thought Tom Brady's not going to win this game, there's no chance, and I don't think so, raise your hands. I thought so. I'm not the only one. But it is definitely possible that Tom Brady and the Buccaneers can win this game, especially with the way their defense has been playing since dating back to the beginning of January. But on the other hand, I still think it's Patrick Mahomes who ends up pulling off the upset. He seems to be replicating Brady's early success while playing at a high level in terms of accolades and statistics. But for the Kansas City Chiefs, though, you have both starting tackles that are out against a team with 2 very good edge rushers, so I think that'll lead to some drive-stalling sacks for Tampa Bay. As far as Tampa Bay goes, their playbook from 2006, I think, is going to continue to be ineffective. Their insatiable thirst for between the tackles runs on early downs is one thing. But once again, relying on Tom Brady going for either Chris Godwin, Cameron Brate, Mike Evans, and or Rob Gronkowski on a few contested catches. I think the lack of takeaways will probably do them in. But going back to another thing as far as the quarterbacks with Tampa Bay and Kansas City. Both teams, as we all know, they have all-star quarterbacks, playmaking wide receivers, and high-profile tight ends. They're well known for their elite passing attacks, but the low-key, the low-key feature of each team's aerial attack could probably be a pivotal factor going into the way they use the running backs. I mean, you have Leonard Fournette and what's his name on Tampa Bay, the other running back. I can't think of his name now. Ronald Jones II. Drew a blank there. You have Ronald Jones II and Leonard Fournette on Tampa Bay, and then on Kansas City you have Le'Veon Bell and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. But no one in the NFL allowed more completions to running backs than Tampa Bay. Their defense yielded 101 receptions to running backs this year. But Kansas City wasn't far behind because they ranked 30th in the NFL by only allowing 93 receptions to opposing running backs. And surprisingly, it was the Chiefs who were dead last in receiving yardage to running backs this year. Kansas City's defense allowed 846 yards, while Tampa Bay ranked 24th in that department with 672. But as far as the running backs, so it might be difficult for the running backs on Kansas City to get going on the ground game against the top-ranked rushing defense in Tampa Bay. But on the other hand, don't be too surprised to see elusive running backs like Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who's only a rookie, but if he finally gets the looks that we've been waiting for in the passing game. I think that would be great for him. But if Tampa Bay learned anything about the Chiefs in their first matchup back in Week 12, they're going to be concentrating more efforts on trying to keep the figurative lid on Tyreek Hill. He ended up gouging them for 270 yards and 3 touchdowns on 13 receptions. All 3 of those stats were season highs for him, by the way. But if Tampa Bay chooses to double up on Tyreek Hill, then Patrick Mahomes Jr. is going to likely have his choice of one-on-one shots with either Clyde Edwards-Helaire or Le'Veon Bell, depending on who's in at running back at the time. Mecole Hardman Jr., another wide receiver I completely forgot about. Sammy Watkins, and or at tight end, Travis Kelce. But Tampa Bay, on the other hand, they displayed a tendency to throw to free agent acquisitions Leonard Fournette with, I think, 36 times. He had 36 receptions. Even more than Ronald Jones II, who I think only had 28. So I think the secret weapon, or at least one of the secret weapons for Tampa Bay, is going to be Leonard Fournette. Keep an eye out on him in the backfield if you're Kansas City. Speaking of the running backs, that reminded me of something as far as Clyde Edwards-Helaire. As soon as I find it, here it is. When Clyde Edwards-Helaire was drafted this year, I originally predicted in my first round draft picks video from 2020 that I want to say it was Patrick Queen out of LSU who was going to go to Kansas City. He ended up going to the Ravens instead, but that's another story for another time. Excuse me. Many speculated that his skill set best suited the Chiefs' offense because of his receiving ability and his overall elusiveness. And I completely agreed. I literally had no intentions or thoughts about Clyde Edwards-Helaire possibly going to the Chiefs, but I was happy to hear that he went there. You know, my prediction was dead wrong as far as selecting Patrick Queen, but Kansas City ended up taking a guy out of LSU, so I was half right. But despite Kansas City's full quiver of passing options, he still managed to receive over 50 targets in the passing game this year. but the Chiefs have yet to realize his full potential in this area. And the thing being for me, as far as Clyde Edwards-Helaire, in my opinion, he's got the tools to be a legitimate downfield weapon in the passing game. I'm still holding out hope that Andy Reid's been saving this offensive wrinkle, for want of a better choice of words, for the end of the year. And I think now that we're finally at that point, I think he's going to finally unleash the beast, so to say, in number 25. I think that would be great. But given the circumstances also that he suffered a high ankle sprain back in December, those plans were partially derailed. I think it was during the game against the New Orleans Saints, if my memory serves right. And I think it was in the Saints-Chiefs game when Drew Brees came back. I think that was when Clyde Edwards-Helaire sustained that high ankle sprain. But he's fully healed from his injury. He's cleared to play, and he's ready to go. So maybe he could flash that ability in the biggest game, not only of his career, but also of his entire life, against a defense that could heavily overlook him. And especially with Clyde Edwards-Helaire being in the Super Bowl. I mean, his final year at LSU, he finds himself going to the college championship game. Then he finds himself going to Kansas City in his rookie year of his NFL career, and he finds himself in the Super Bowl. Back-to-back times, Clyde Edwards-Helaire has been in the big game, one way or another. Who would have thunk? But anyway, as far as the wide receivers go, if Antonio Brown, who I think is going to be he's going to be a dark horse as far as going into this game, as far as one of the other weapons that Tom Brady's going to be able to utilize, as far as downfield passes and or maybe a quick slant route or a fake handoff, something like that. Antonio Brown is able to play depending on whether or not the status of his knee injury. I don't even remember when this injury was that he sustained it, but Antonio Brown's recovering from a knee injury, and if he's able to play, look for the Buccaneers to maybe run more 3 receiver sets to pair him up with Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. The two-headed monster of Cameron Brate and Rob Gronkowski is going to be another story. Because back in Week 12, Cameron Brate and Rob Gronkowski combined for 10 catches for about 140 yards. But that was before Antonio Brown was really acclimated to the offense at the time. But he's had time to get ready for it and get used to it now. So, on the side for Kansas City, look out for a set of plays involving Sammy Watkins, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, and maybe Mecole Hardman Jr. also. The pass rush of the Buccaneers will probably cause some problems for Kansas City. But as far as Patrick Mahomes Jr. goes, where there's a will, there's a way, and I think he'll be able to exploit the pass coverage, even if it does a better job of controlling Tyreek Hill. For example, you double up on Tyreek Hill. Who else do you have to throw the ball to? Sammy Watkins, Mecole Hardman Jr., Travis Kelce. Or you try to run it yourself, or who do you hand it off to in the event that it's either Clyde Edwards-Helaire or Le'Veon Bell? Also, Travis Kelce, number 87. That leads me to him next. One of the best tight ends in the NFL right now. The body of work that he has, this is just phenomenal. I think Tampa Bay's defense is going to focus on him to the point that probably getting 100 yards or more feels like a little bit of a stretch. But at the end of the day, I think Travis Kelce still manages to get his catches and his receptions. Number 15 will definitely make sure of that. Other than that, guys, that's really about all I've got on this end. Now comes the part where I gotta try and come up with a score. I hate when I go to do this part, but let's have a little bit of fun with it. I would also say who I have as far as my line, who the favorite is, and what the point spread is. But your spread will be different from mine, and vice versa. So, regardless of that, this is going to be a close game. It's going to be fun, and this is going to be difficult for me, but here it goes. I'm going to say Kansas City 34, Tampa Bay 30. Maybe, just maybe, Kansas City pulls off the upset, but we'll find out this upcoming Sunday night. So, be that as it may, let me know what you guys think. Give me your thoughts. Follow me on Instagram. Subscribe to my YouTube page if you haven't already done so. PlayStation Network, LinkedIn, whatever other profiles, etc. links that I have on my main channel page. You'll find them on there. And keep in touch. Let me know what you guys think. I will talk to you guys later. May the best team win, and hopefully that's the Kansas City Chiefs. Hoping to do a recap video the night after the Super Bowl, because I don't want to watch the Super Bowl, do a recap video, and then have to get ready to go to work the following day. I have no energy for that. So this upcoming Monday night, I promise you, I will do a recap video. I think I said after the NFC and AFC championship games, I would do a recap video of those, but I never got to it, so I apologize. By then I figured everybody and their mother already just wanted to get to the Super Bowl and get the season over with. So that being said, let me know what you guys think. Drop a comment, smash the subscribe button, and like I said before, subscribe to me on YouTube, follow me on Instagram, send me a friend request on the PlayStation Network, whatever other ways you are able to get in contact with me. And I will talk to you guys later. Be well, stay safe, enjoy the rest of your night, as well as your Super Bowl Sunday night, and that'll really be about it for me. I am out. Talk to you guys later, and take care.